And now, here's Kathleen Jacoby in San Francisco.
Welcome, Kathleen.
Thank you.
How are you tonight?
Good, thank you. Nice to be here.
This is one author I already know a little bit, and that is because of our relationship that has formed on America Online.
That's right.
And this has taken place over the last, I would say, month or two?
Yeah, very quickly.
Yeah, very quickly. And you're one of those people that is sort of ubiquitous and posts everywhere in the New Age section. So you were very much noticed right away. And then I noticed that you wrote a book called Vision of the Grail. And it sounds like it's somewhat like the Celestine Prophecy, or at least in that vein. And I guess that would be a good place to find out why you wrote the book.
Well, it has been compared to that, and the story behind the writing of this book is kind of interesting because I work with people and have for years, and I write and I do various different things. But at the beginning of the year, I have a habit of going with friends of mine to what is called the Labyrinth. And this is up at a church in San Francisco called Grail Cathedral. I happen to live on the peninsula of San Francisco. And the Labyrinth is an ancient, sort of a mythical tool. It's a geometrical pattern. And it's laid out on the floor, and it's a copy from a labyrinth in Chartres Cathedral in France. And so we would walk on this periodically, about once every month. And I oftentimes would find that I would have a feeling of real insight, and we might call it guidance, as I would be there. And this one particular day, we walked in February of 1996, and I had a very strong sense that as I was walking, I got a sense that my work was going to change, and it was as though the work I had done to that point was an apprenticeship for something else. And that's all I had the sense of. I knew nothing other than that. And
this is while you were walking on the Labyrinth?
While I was walking on the Labyrinth. It's really it can be a very extraordinary experience because you're moving in a patterned situation. There's only one way in and one way out. And it goes in a, not just circular, but you walk back and forth along a path.
So it's sort of like a maze.
It is
it's
like
a maze,
a
right?
maze, except that there's only one way in and one way out. So you're not having anything that's trying to trick you or to confuse you. You're just moving into the center, and it's the idea of it is that you are moving into the center of your own being, and you are connecting with a deeper part of yourself. And then as you walk out, there's a feeling of some kind of resolution, and people have all kinds of experiences when they walk this labyrinth. And it's even been said, I read somewhere, that there is some consideration that it may mimic brainwave patterns.
Really?
So it's a fascinating journey. We had our session on the Labyrinth. I got that kind of an idea, and I thought, well, I wonder what this means. And as a couple of months went by, I realized that I was going to have to take another consultant job to supplement my income. And I mentioned it to a friend, and they immediately offered, she and her fiancé offered me a position of helping to create an office for them and get them up and running. And I just felt this sense of, oh no, I'm going to do this again, because it was my way of just avoiding or not really giving full attention to my own work, which was to write, which was to do work with people, and which is my own interest in pursuits of, let's say, of a spiritual nature, but just of a deepening of human nature as well. So I told them that I would think about it, and they said, take your time. And when everything was said and done, I realized that I couldn't do that. That was an old way. And all of us go into these habits. We find a way that is easy for us in the moment because it alleviates some kind of stress. And what I recognized was that I couldn't do that. So I told them that this wasn't going to work, and I had a feeling that what I ought to do instead was to write something and to supplement my income with my savings. And I thought, well, that's fine, but what am I going to write? I happen to be an editor of a quarterly newsletter, and I knew that wasn't it, and nothing more came again. So one day I was seated in my living room looking out at my garden, and I had finished the 10th insight, probably about 2 weeks before. What I needed to do was to write a book that was going to be the next step after the 10th insight and the Celestine Prophecy. And it was a very strong impulse, and I said, but I don't write fiction. And this sense of presence, I'll call it, for lack of a better word, just kind of conveyed to me, yes, you can do that. Go upstairs and sit down and turn on your computer. And I said, but that's not my thing. I do nonfiction. And it said, it doesn't have to be great literature, but it definitely has to bring the next step forward. And this is not just for you, it is for others. So I thought, well, what can I lose? If it doesn't work, I'll just throw it away. So I came upstairs, I turned on my computer, and I had an idea for the first sentence in my mind, and I began typing. And as I was typing, things and remembrances of things that I'd learned in the past, many, many different classes I'd been through and workshops I'd taken, and just the benefit of experience, came through, and I was writing, and it was just flowing out of me. And in one part right in the beginning, I decided that the narrator, who was going to remain anonymous throughout the book, was going to go with her friend to a place where they would meditate. And in the midst of the meditation, I had no idea what was going to come from this, but in the midst of writing it, all of a sudden in the meditation, the narrator was told to find the Holy Grail. And I said, find the what? Because I had no idea what this was about. And from that, the whole tone of the book took shape, and I went on a search to find out what that meant.
Literally?
Literally. I went questioning. I have very dear friends who own a metaphysical bookstore, and I went in and I asked the owner, and I asked other friends of mine who happened to be involved in esoteric studies, and I got all these pieces of information, and I started to incorporate them into this plot that was unfolding. And the book just began to write itself. And I came to a space at one place. I mean, again, Steve, I had absolutely no idea what was coming out. It just kept flowing. And there were many things that were parts of what I'd learned. They were also things that I had read. And it was forming in such a way, and I would hand out parts of it. As a chapter would be done, I'd hand it out to all these people who wanted to read it. And everybody said, oh, this is great. What's the next one? Give us more. And so I kept going. And there was one point where I was writing about what we'll call human energy systems, because this story evolved in such a way that the narrator goes with another friend to a lecture that's given at a bookstore. And part of her experience is on the labyrinth, because this is a very important thing for the future. It's something that we're being drawn back to because it's seeking to bring us, or it's a tool for bringing us back to a greater sense of collective consciousness. And so the narrator was drawn to go to a lecture at a bookstore, and there she met this very mysterious individual who invited her to go to a workshop that he was giving in New Mexico. And from that, the whole tone again picked up, as there were 6 people who met, who at the beginning were apparently strangers, and from their meeting, this unfolding story allows for the growth and the development of each of the individuals and the deepening of their own spiritual journey, because that's what the book is about. And it engages a reader to come in and to participate and to see where they have gone through similar experiences themselves, and jogs them to the remembrance of those.
Kathleen, had you ever written a book before?
Well, I'd never written a novel before. No, I hadn't.
So what made you think that you could write one now?
I didn't think it. I said, I don't do this. And yet that impulse was so strong that I felt that something definitely was up and that I was to do this. And in the doing of it, I'm fairly skeptical about things. I really wanted to reference this with other people to see if I was off. Mm-hmm. And I got just incredible feedback. I got tremendous encouragement. And so it unfolded.
When did you start writing the book, actually?
I started writing the book on May 4th of last year, 1996. And the shell form was completed on June 24th. No, is that right? Yes, I think it is. May 4th to June 24th. I think that was right. It was 54 days, I believe, in the main writing. I wrote sometimes 16 hours a day.
Wow, so that came very quickly.
I was totally propelled with this. And as I created the characters, some of these people in the book are people I know. There are some people who are composites. There are actual characters who are marvelous teachers in different arenas of growth, and I've incorporated them in a fictional setting, but the characters are real. I wrote a resource guide at the end of the book because one of the things I believe is so important at this particular time is that we participate in the process of our life. It is not enough to have a book that tells us something. We need something that engages us in such a way as to say, here are elements for you to look at, for you to use. Now, here's somewhere that you can go. Here are people you can connect with. Here are books you can read. Here are videos and tapes that are available. Find your way. What interests you in this? Pursue it. Go further.
This is Steve Fryer. We're with Kathleen Jacoby from San Francisco, author of Vision of the Grail, a wonderful new novel, which is in the vein of, what's that other book? I can't remember.
The Celestine Prophecy.
Oh yeah, The Celestine Prophecy.
You can't remember. Let's see, I think it's 8 million copies.
Only 8 million. Well, he's got a long way to go to catch up with M. Scott Peck and his
right.
Road Less Traveled, which has been on the top seller list for, what, 60 weeks or something, or 60 months?
Man. Yeah.
Yeah, so anyway, one doesn't just come to write a metaphysical, spiritual adventure story without a background. I mean, you must have some kind of training or affiliations that you've indulged yourself in over the years. And I was just wondering how you felt. Tell us what they are, perhaps, what you want to tell us, and then let's get into how that perhaps affected the writing of the book.
I've been a spiritual seeker for about the last 30 years. I think from the time I was a little girl, I was aware of something. I felt very strongly that there was a presence in my life that I felt everybody had, and found out later that that wasn't necessarily true. That just seemed to be a teacher to me, and I went through all the religions. I was very interested in finding out about religion. I had a very strong sense of my own connection to what I called my friend God. And it wasn't what I found in many of the places that I went to seek that sense of communion and remembrance. And I then turned to some of the metaphysical things that were going on in the late 60s, early 70s. And it was then that I jumped into things. I went through a course called Mind Dynamics, which I think was a ripoff of Silva Mind Control. And that taught me the whole aspect of visualization and of being able to go to a deeper place within yourself. And then I began to journey through a lot of the different philosophies, and I went to workshops, and I belonged to several organizations and philosophical organizations. So it's like the background, the foundation was set. And I didn't do anything per se with it except to continue to grow with an idea that at some point in my life this would create the base or the framework for a teaching that would come out. And this book is one of the avenues of that teaching. The reaction of people, it's been very heartwarming because they have felt that there are so many things in there that talk to them in their own lives about where they are.
What do you think the book actually does? What do you think its purpose is?
Its purpose seems to be to awaken people to the incredible possibility of what life truly is. In other words, we live our so-called mundane lives, and those are important. But there needs to be a parallel life that we are leading, which draws us more deeply into the soul of who we are, into our spiritual nature. And spiritual, unfortunately, is not always synonymous with religious, because religion has a necessity to create community, and it is the holder of ethics and values, but it always comes from a particularized view. In other words, if I am on one side of the ocean, I'm going to see a particular vantage point, and that's going to forge my idea of what God is. And someone else in another arena is going to have a different vantage point. And it's polarized, whereas spirit is inclusive of all of those. It is everything, and it includes even science and things that we don't call by a name. But it comes to a space, or it comes from a space, a convergence in the heart. And it allows us to feel this incredible bond and knowing that there's something more in life. There's something that we are here to do besides just take up space and make a living and persevere. We are also here to explore and to grow and to transform ourselves.
You said you spent a lot of time on America Online.
Yes,
and
I did.
we wanted to get into that a little bit and how that has affected you and how you relate to that whole internet or World Wide Web experience and how you think that's affecting humanity.
I see this is an adjunct to me of what I was writing about, and I even speak about how important the internet is. The internet to me is a marvelous opportunity because there is no distinction between people, whether you're famous or you are considered a quote-unquote nobody. You are equal. You have no faith, you have no race, you have no religion, you have no gender, you have no age. Each of the individual, none of the types that we are typing in there, in other words, the print, nobody's print is bigger than anybody else's print. So it is a grouping of individuals who come to participate in an experiment and an exploration of allowing ourselves to move into arenas that speak to us, where our interests are, and we connect with like-minded souls who happen to come across as, I see it all as a grouping of ideas. Each of us is an idea, and nobody is any better than the caliber of their idea. And we gather, and on the forums that we have, there can be disagreement, there can be all sorts of things that occur. There can be catalysts to thinking, but the participation moves very rapidly into feeling. You can feel another person's energetic over the whatever, this thing we call internet, and in our case it happens to be America Online.
I would agree.
And I happen to think that regardless of all the problems that services have, I think it's an outstanding service. I have been on a couple of others, and I just think that the forums they've provided, the way they've set it up, has given people a marvelous opportunity in many different arenas. Now, we happen to have met on the New Age boards, and I've been very impressed with the caliber of people who've been there.
It seems like you might have checked out some other areas.
Well, I've looked over at the Writers Forum, and I have a daughter who is a new mother, and she's been interested in the forums that are for parenting. And she happened to have visited me recently, and she was checking all of that out. And when she was done, she said, I'm going to go and get on AOL. She said, I see what you're talking about. So whatever the interest, there are all kinds of arenas to meet like-minded people. And here we are, individuals who would never meet one another.
True.
We come from all over this country. And here we are in this space, this cyberspace.
Well, I've seen it go beyond that. In the year or so that I've been online, I've seen where people have met in the forums and the folders and had wonderful discussions, and then perhaps later they would meet on a summer vacation somewhere for coffee, or they would perhaps go to a seminar together and plan to meet there and extend the friendship and the warmth, and then when they come back online again, it's like then they really do know each other. So it is another form of community that has been developing.
And more than that, what it has shown to me, because what I have encountered is the immense generosity of individuals, immense generosity of spirit, wanting to share tapes, wanting to share. There are so many online books that are being given to people to read that are not, people aren't charging for it. Now granted, they haven't gone through the whole editing process, but there's this generosity of wanting to share and people willing to research something for someone else. And it has made me aware that we in this country are very generous people. And we would not know that if we just pay attention to what we're hearing in the newspaper, what we're reading in the newspapers and hearing on TV shows. It's like there's so much polarized towards the negative.
Right.
And here in this experiment that is not being, it's not being regulated by any group. We're being allowed to be who we really are, and what we really are is really quite precious. I'm very hopeful when I see this. And we're learning, this is the first step. for those of us who are comfortable typing, there are probably more of us on these services. But now, as there is an expansion of different programs that allow you to speak into a microphone and your words are translated into type, we're going to get a whole other group of people.
Right.
And gradually it will go into video.
Internet phones and video phones.
Yes.
That should be a lot of fun.
Yes, I am a little sorry about that, because I think it's wonderful to have the sense of each person being equal. And of course, once you begin to identify people, then we go back into our old stereotypes. And on the way it is now, there's no way of knowing who anyone is. You interact purely from that state of consciousness.
True. That is precious. Tell us about your newsletter. It's called Seasons of the Soul. And how long have you been doing that?
Well, I've only been doing this for a couple of years, and actually it was born out of a lot of people who are clients of mine. I also am. I do work with symbolism of number and name and number symbology. And a lot of people ask me, what more could they have? What did I do? Because a lot of them had read things that I'd written and loved my writing. And so out of that, I decided it might be fun to put together a newsletter, because there was so much more that I was involved with than just the work that I did. And I wanted to share that with people. I always saw myself as a yellow page. It was like, you know, you go to the yellow pages. Well, I seem to be able to connect people with people and things that were happening, and being able to provide that link to others. And I thought, wouldn't it be fun to do this in a newsletter context? And I got a wonderful program that allowed me to do it very easily. And it's been tremendous fun. Very fulfilling.
So what's the purpose of it then?
The purpose of it is to alert people to things that are occurring and ideas that will make them think. That's I think my whole purpose. I'm here to awaken an individual to the fact that they are an incredible spiritual being housed in a body, and that life is a journey that is just filled with all kinds of possibility. And it is not to take away from the journey of our commitment to our families and our commitment to contributing in what I call the mundane world. I'm not putting that down. It's very essential. But when we only do that without having that action being fueled by a spiritual life that we need to live, life becomes very shallow. And I see that we have really allowed ourselves to take a shallow road in many cases, and I'm trying to bring people to an understanding of there's something deeper. You can play in a deeper pool. You don't have to just wade in the kiddie pool where you find yourself. And by doing that, then this insatiable need to have the next big car or a bigger house or more money is alleviated, because that's not really what we're looking for anyway. It's just what we have allowed ourselves to get stuck in, because we've gotten off the mark of moving from first things first.
I agree. Kathleen, we've only got a couple of minutes remaining, so I'd like to tell the listeners how to get a hold of your book, or how to contact you. How do we do that?
Well, my book can be ordered through Amazon.com, which is an online bookstore.
So that's like www.amazon.com.
Yes.
And the book is Vision of the Grail.
It's Vision of the Grail.
And your name is Kathleen Jacoby.
And it's $17.95, and it's paperback. And if anybody has any questions, they can reach me at k92237@aol.com.
You want to repeat that?
Yes, k92237@aol.com.
Well, Kathleen, I'd like to thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you, Steve.
And on our inaugural show, especially.
Well, I wish you great success. It's a wonderful concept.
Well, we hope to be talking to you again when the book is out there a little bit more.
Thank you.
I know it's going to sell real well via word of mouth, like many other great books do.
Right now it is.
And it'll pick up momentum, and little by little, before you know it, you'll have a major publisher. And it'll be out there just like the Celestine or Conversations with God or any of those other great spiritual books.
Well, that's fine. If Spirit wants it that way, I'm delighted.
Okay, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Stay with us now. We'll be right back right after this.